So we really live in quite interesting, quite fascinating times in the present moment. And it's really no wonder that it is so difficult to understand what a human being actually is and what that actually means, what that actually entails. Because we seem to live in an ocean of paradigms, models, images, celebrities, gurus, etc., all of which seem to originate from what we might call the demonic sphere of consciousness. That might sound like a weird statement, like, oh, wait, demonic sphere of consciousness, that's so crazy. Well, perhaps this might be easily exemplified if we were to examine and understand the literal demonic responses that manifest when we try to question or step outside of these types of constructs. And basically, understanding that we live in this ocean, we're submerged in this sea of noise and cacophony and just nonsense. And I don't mean that in like a boo-hoo sort of pessimistic, like fuck the world type of way. More so in just simply looking at our situation as it is, with the understanding that if we actually start where we are, understand what we are, and maybe where we want to go, that we might be a bit more empowered, a bit more aware to actually do those types of things. Yet, it is very difficult to do that, obviously, when, for example, we want to be spiritual, something of that nature. But all of the images and the examples and the paradigms that we are perhaps given for that are actually going to lead us in a different direction because they're the product of someone else's delusion or someone else's obsession with one thing. Or, for example, let's say a spiritual tradition. You can pick whatever one you like. Let's say originally, maybe at one time, in its totality, let's say it was like a 36 volume set of an encyclopedia. In each page or each volume was like 1,000 pages. So we have 36,000 pages. And let's say the font is like pretty small because it's an old book and the language is very complex and difficult to understand unless you have perhaps someone to make sense of it for you and guide you through that process. But let's say that's what we're starting with, is that this is what a spiritual tradition is. But we have in modern times, basically people have like this. Like, yeah, this is the whole tradition. This is all you need to do. I took this one sentence from this one page from 36,000 pages, and now I know this is it. And it's like, well, if that were really true, then this would probably be working, but it hasn't and it isn't. And the amount of delusion and the amount of exhaustion and energy and nonsense that we have to exert to upkeep it is indicative that it's probably not actually the thing, or that maybe it is kind of an important aspect or concept or construct within this 36,000 page volume. But if we don't actually know where we are in the volume and where we started and where we want to go and why we are doing that in the first place, and then when we need to move past that page, then it all tends to be just a bit like fumbling around in the dark. Maybe we'll get lucky, maybe not. But again, we have to understand sort of the delusion around that. Now, we can also look at, well, what is a tradition? That word tradition, spiritual tradition, or a tradition for developing a human being. Well, this becomes very difficult because we live in this kind of politically correct type of world where everyone's like, oh, everyone has their own path, and then everyone will find their own way, and enlightenment and this and that's just all how you experience it, and God is this, and it's all about your personal. It's like it's almost like saying, well, you participated in the race, so here's a trophy, but it's like, but you didn't actually do anything, and you think you're going to get the same reward because you just turned up. You're going to get the same reward as a person who trained 8 hours a day for 30 years. That's basically what you're saying. Which, okay, maybe that makes sense in the realm of casual athletic endeavor or exercise and entertainment, but we're talking about probably one of the most difficult things that a human being can do, which is work with their own their own dynamics, their own blueprints of their consciousness. One of the most difficult, tricky things to do, which many people try and most people never, ever, ever, ever do, and very few ever have. Yet we think that it's going to be just like our societal construct, but we don't actually see that. We're trying to take this thing and make it seem like it's just our societal construct, but we don't actually see that our societal construct is part of the actual limitation, and we think our construct is actually the thing when we don't see that it is just another construct, much in the same way we might look at another culture and be like, oh, that's cute, they do it that way. And there's other time and place, oh, it's cute, they do it that way. Ours is just also another cute type of superstition, which may have made sense at one point, but it might not anymore, especially if we don't actually look at it and see it for what it is, to see if it actually makes sense right now and is actually working and is actually true. So getting back to the word tradition. What is a tradition? Well, a tradition is typically something you do kind of in the same way for a certain result. It's like, oh, this is tradition. This is the way we do things, right? Well, if we look at a certain spiritual tradition or human development tradition or whatever you want to call it, they basically defined a lot of things. What a human being is, what the world is, what those things mean, how they interact, and then based on those things, how we can then take a human through a certain process of development from start to perhaps a goal, which establishing each along the way what certain goals are, what certain indications are, what certain indicators are, what symptoms and symptomologies of when we're going in the right direction and we're going in the wrong direction. Which a tradition would be a certain way of doing that certain thing, which obviously may be adapted a bit based to the individual. If you're short, you're tall, you're fat, you're skinny, you're young, you're old, you're smart, you're stupid, you're rich, you're poor, whatever, these types of things, understanding the nature of the person and saying, okay, well, it needs to shift a little bit this way, but still checking in to say, are you getting the result? Is the result going in the right direction? Is it building the right things? Is it going in the wrong direction? Is it building the wrong things? Is it just amplifying delusion, or is it helping those things to actually settle and fall away? But that's implying a certain structure, a certain set of things, which why I mentioned that and why I went on the whole tangent before is because that's hard for modern people to really get their head around, because we don't even have any conceptual understanding of the world in which we live, the nonsense in which we were given, and how we try to carry that over into something as difficult and as troublesome and problematic as developing ourselves or changing our lives or these types of things. Especially when we live in this sea and this ocean of nonsense and noise, which generally tends to manifest in a couple of ways. Number one, an extreme obsession with the mind, where everything is like this mental rearrangement, which if we even look at things like Eckhart Tolle, being in the present moment, all this types of shit, it's an obsession with being in your fucking head. And the idea is like, oh, you got to be in the moment and not think. It's all existing here. But that's actually not how it works. You can't force any of those things. There's certain mechanisms and certain processes which can happen and which can be put in place, which will cause that to happen naturally as a side effect. But it's not something you take your mental effort to make your mental chatter go away. That doesn't make any fucking sense. So you have mental anxiety and stress, and then you're going to take your mental anxiety and stress and make it go away because you believe that it will somehow give you some type of reward or somehow make you something else, which again is more mental anxiety and more mental stress because of desire, because of the agenda, because of the fear and the anxiety surrounding it, that, oh, what if it doesn't happen, I need to get it, and this and that, and I'm not good enough as I am. So that makes not a lot of sense at all when you just look at it for about 90 seconds like I just did. And that's a huge chunk of what people construe as spirituality, in the sense that meditation is it's some sense of repressing your mind or not thinking or being in the moment. All these things make no sense. You can't not be in the moment. Like, You're in the moment from when you're born until you die. That's reality. But you're continually clouding your mind with more constructs and more delusions instead of actually saying, well, wait, what is a human being? What is my actual situation as I find it? What is my actual experience right now? And then actually using, I don't know, some type of quality or skill that you might actually build and cultivate rather than some generic sense of repression and really fucking up your nervous system. And then another major manifestation that tends to come out is people get obsessed with emotions. People get obsessed with catharsis, emotional experience, emotional processing, bliss states, feeling blissed out, and all of the things, and the ecstatic dance and the sex cults and all this type of shit, which is all great. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you want to feel good. Duh. I mean, yeah. But to construe that that's somehow your spiritual path or that's leading you through a process, that's something that someone made up. Just like people think Tantra and yoga has something to do with sex when it actually doesn't. That's just like a modern thing that someone made up at some point, but it really has nothing to do with it all. The word Tantra actually has very different definitions and usages and meanings. If we actually, I don't know, did research and took it back past the modern, basic, generic, elementary level. So we have people get really, really, really obsessed with the mind, people really obsessed with the emotional thing, and then these things tend to get mixed together, and you get really neurotic people. I'm working on my issues. I'm really processing and developing this, and I spent all weekend processing. It's like generally what you're doing is interpreting really subtle sensations on your nervous system as some type of energetic or spiritual experience when it's just a subtle sensation on your nervous system. But because you're layering and putting all this mental construct and heaviness and density on top of it, it doesn't make any sense. Why doesn't it make any sense? We talk about the word enlightenment. We just if we just cast aside all everything aside from what the word actually means, we take it apart. That prefix en basically means to create a state of or engender a certain quality. Light, so we're going to engender or create a certain quality of lightness. Ment, M-E-N-T, as the root of menta, M-E-T-N-A, M-E-T-N-A or something, I don't know, referring to mental. So creating or engendering a quality or a state of lightness within our self. Okay, but we're trying to do that with all this excess density and all this heaviness and baggage and chatter and stress and striving and agendas and all this type of thing. Doesn't really make any sense at all, really, from any stretch of the imagination. So we have people really obsessed with the whole mental sphere, really obsessed with the emotions and the heart. Oh, you got to open your heart. You got to be kind. You got to be loving. You got to be this. You got to be that. It's like, no, actually, generally what you're doing through that is just really undermining your sense of boundaries and really taking your health in the wrong direction. Because generally what people associate with, oh, I'm empathic, I'm really sensitive, I'm really this and really that. No, your health is just not good. Like, you've just taken your development, taking your nervous system in the wrong direction. So you're getting, oh, I'm getting these spiritual images, I'm getting dream states. No, you're just slack. You have no power. You have no integrity, no tensile strength, no vitality. You're just like a limp monk, basically. So no wonder you're getting assaulted with higher vibrational frequencies or whatever the fuck people say, these types of images or sensations or vibes. Usually that's like what we might say ghosts or demonic type of thing that kind of would really enjoy a bit of a meal from this kind of dimension or reality, this frequency of consciousness, because on the other ones they don't have the things that we have and they're kind of fighting to get it. But they see, oh, look, this person, their boundaries are garbage. They're just totally opening their heart to everything, and they really want to be a martyr. They really want to be a savior. So we'll just go have ourselves a little meal, and then as a reward, we'll give them a little sense of like, hey, look at that. You're a good person. You're saving the world. You're helping people. Wow, you're so spiritual. Wow, you're like Jesus. Wow, you're kind of just like Buddha. Wow, you're connected to this ancient spiritual tradition. Wow, look at you. You're really great. You're really like doing it now. You're really going to be a better person now. Meanwhile, they're saying this to your face, but they're reaching around and taking your wallet and taking your savings account. And then there's really an interesting connection where oftentimes when people are really, really spiritual, they also have all these like digestive issues, autoimmune conditions, low energy, got to take all these supplements, got to take all these herbs, got to eat all these strange exotic diets, and we can't eat this and we can't eat that, we can only eat this, we can only eat that, this certain times. It's like, might there be a connection between these type of things, and might we actually start to understand that it's taking our health in the wrong direction and is actually a symptomology of something. But people, I'm spiritual now. Oh, I'm really suffering, but I'm blissed. But I'm suffering, but I'm gonna get the carrot. Oh, okay, whatever you want to do. Let's just not look at reality. Okay, so the third aspect is people get really just obsessed with physicality. And in that way, we have another aspect of what we call modern yoga, where it's basically just Western biomechanics and Western physiology, which is amazing, actually. I mean, if you have structural issues, you have health problems, you have injuries, that shit is amazing and can really, really help your body and really help your health. It can really actually, in a short period of time, if you actually learn, if these people really understand physiology and kinesiology and say, oh, this is what's going on with you, do these things. Oh my God, this whole thing just released, which is amazing and it's powerful. And especially because modern medicine is so inept and impotent and childish. For example, something like, I don't know, carpal tunnel syndrome, right? Modern medicine says, oh, we'll give you these drugs, but whatever, maybe we'll just go in and cut this thing and that'll help. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my fucking life. When it's like, wait, you studied anatomy and physiology, this connects up into this and up into this. And it's actually all one fucking thing. There's fascia and nerves and all this type of shit. And perhaps the pain down here might be related up here or somehow up here. So let's take a fucking look. I don't know. It's like ridiculous. But the thing is, it's ridiculous, but it's also sad because no one knows. That's the sad thing, is no one knows. Some of these options, some of these solutions are so simple and so easy, but because we're surrounded by fucking morons, and because they're morons that are possessed by demons who can't actually, so they can't see that they're morons, and if you question them and call them on being morons, they will cut you down. They will use the law. They will use force. They will use all of these things to admit that they generally have a really small penis and don't want to actually acknowledge it and accept themselves for who they are. So they have to compensate with all of this nonsense. Or perhaps they just have some demonic shit feeding off of their psyche and just navigating them through their world, thinking, dangling the carrot in front of their face, like, oh, almost got it. Oh, no. Maybe that's a thing, but fortunately, these types of alternative modalities are becoming more prevalent and more easily accessible, which is fucking amazing because a lot of people are actually legitimately suffering in pain unnecessarily, and simple modalities can interject, sort it out, and they can have a whole life-changing experience. All of that being said, you notice that has nothing to do with spirituality, nothing to do with developing a person along a certain path based on a certain tradition. Obviously, yes, its health is important, but that's health. That's actually what we would call medicine. Like if we were just saying, oh, well, I just need this health thing, that's what's called medicine. But in terms of understanding spiritual traditions and these types of things, health and healing was never actually the aim. It was actually just a side effect of a larger, more powerful and dynamic process which was unfolding, which was much deeper. And it's difficult to do that if we are fixated on the small thing. Yet it is also difficult to not do that if we're fixated on the small thing. So obviously we need certain things in place to, support our health. But when we're layering all the additional baggage on top, it's going to work less. It's going to be less potent. It's going to not maybe even take us in the right direction. So it might be more efficient and effective to just actually see a thing for what it is and accept it for what it is, for its pros and its cons and its benefits or in its drawbacks, and then work with it based on those terms, because that's actually a bit more honest and real, and dare I say actually loving and compassionate, because it's based on understanding. It's based on actual, I don't know, insight and acceptance of things as they are, which is really what all that word even fucking means. Because the idea that love and compassion, all this type of shit, that's a modern construct because we live in a highly Christian, monotheistic world which glorifies being a martyr and glorifies being some type of savior. But in actuality, if we trace the translations and the meanings of these words back, they don't really have the connotations, the denotations, the meanings, and the implications of what we think they do in modern times. So, anyways, going back to my point is the third manifestation is people get really obsessed with the physical, and they think spiritual progress is like lining up their bones and structuring their physicality in a certain way because somehow it might magically make energy do a thing, or somehow flapping their arms around is going to move energy. Like, oh, I'm channeling the energy of the Big Dipper in my crown chakra because I'm holding my hand over my head. Okay, well, what makes that different from just like, my armpit itches? So does that mean when you reach your hand like this to itch your armpit, are you channeling the energy into your fucking crown chakra? If you reach up to scratch your head, does that mean you're channeling the energy of the crown chakra? Okay, well then what's the fucking difference? Oh, it's my intentionality and I'm breathing and I'm relaxed. Okay, well, take that intentionality and all that shit and use it to become a millionaire. Oh wait, it's never actually going to work because just intentionality and like believing in and hoping and visualizing it to be true, that actually doesn't make a lot happen in this world. Sure, it might be a component, but generally it's actually another delusion, and it's removing us from our actual experience, and again is another aspect of some really nonsense bullshit that someone sold to us and we somehow took on board because unfortunately we didn't have any other better options. So the third thing is people get really obsessed with the physical, right? So this is where we go back to like, oh, my spiritual practice is sex, and I'm into polyamory, I'm into open relationships because that's more spiritual, or I'm a nudist because that's more spiritual, or I'm a dancer because that's really spiritual, and I move my physical body because that's my spiritual practice. It's like, well, I mean, maybe, but that's really like saying that trigonometry is like saying you're doing trigonometry because you're doing 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's like, well, yeah, 2 plus 2 equals 4 might be part of trigonometry, but you're not doing trigonometry with 2 plus 2 is 4. But yeah, it might be a part of it at some point in a very small way, yes, but you don't know trigonometry, you haven't studied it, you don't practice it, so 2 plus 2 equals 4 isn't actually doing anything aside from 2 plus 2 equals 4. But that's just like common sense. So I don't know. So anyways, hopefully this has been helpful in some fashion. And people might wonder, what the hell is this guy talking about? Who does he think he is? Where does he get this type of crazy information? Like, I don't know, Chinese medicine, Chinese philosophy? But it's like, wait, he didn't go to school, he ain't got no degree. How can we trust him? It's like, well, we have to understand that if you go to school in modern times, you're studying traditional Chinese medicine, which isn't actually traditional because it was invented in the 50s by the communists. Communists were atheists, didn't they? Didn't they also, spend a long time trying to murder all the acupuncturists? Yeah. Didn't they spend a long time trying to get rid of every aspect of old traditional Chinese culture? Yeah. Didn't they really hate anything that had anything to do with like spirituality or these esoteric aspects of human consciousness? Yeah. Didn't they kill millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people? Yeah. Wait, didn't like 60 million people die during that time? Yes. Oh, but they also created Chinese medicine, which is so spiritual and ancient and powerful and da-da-da. It's like, huh. It's an interesting leap that you made. Okay, so tossing all that aside, it's like, well, if we actually go back and understand some more of the roots of what is kind of still in there, but kind of not, but kind of no one really understands or gets it because they're a bit illiterate, is that the medicine generally was a bit more shamanic. In the most simplistic, basic sense, health was the degree of which you are embodied, meaning I don't know, the energy or the shun or the five spirits that are a bit yours, the degree to which those are anchored and rooted in the body, the sense that you are embodied or incarnate, carne, flesh, meat, incarnate, the degree of which that is happening for you was health. The degree to which that was not happening and these other things were getting in, that was disease. So people think Qigong is an ancient practice. It isn't. People think Chinese medicine is an ancient practice. It isn't. These are all modern, fairly modern constructs which were made up. The real ancient shit is really fucking weird, really fucking crazy, which is why no one does it and why it's not public and it's not out there, because people that did it would probably go to jail because people would think they were crazy, because they're operating outside of this ocean of demonic insanity that we're all operating in, yet we're trying to reach out of it. It's an interesting type of thing. But really, simplifying it down to the most basic thing, that's really what it is. So what were the practices associated with it? Things called Dao Yins, which were originally things to purge spirits from your body. And people think Qigong and like these Chinese arts are like, oh, I'm doing Qigong. Oh, I'm so soft and relaxed. Like, well, no, you're slack and your chi is just going bleh. Like, that's not really doing a lot. But actually, Dao Yins are really quite fucking painful and quite intense, which if you imagine you're trying to work with these vibrational substances of your body, that might be intense. Because, I don't know, let's say you want to go to the gym and you want to lose a bunch of weight. You're not going to think that's just going to be like, oh, I'm losing weight. I am losing all this weight. I'm just relaxing. Oh, yeah. You wouldn't do that and be like, I'm getting such a six-pack right now. I'm really bulking up. Oh, I'm bulking up right now. Oh, yeah. No, you would understand that there's a bit more to it than just that. It's a bit more complex. Because, yeah, you might be able to bulk up. Are you going to do it in the right way? Or are you just going to build a bunch of scar tissue and lock up all of your joints and walk around like you're in a body cast because you turned all of your tissues into a fucking body cast? Or you can do it in a right way where you're strong and supple and all these other things, but there's a large spectrum of possibility. It's not just like, I'm going to go to the gym and do this thing because I'm an entitled modern person. Interesting. But this other thing, which is more complex, more esoteric, more risky, we think it's just going to be a walk in the park. We gotta be nice. We gotta eat the right diet. We gotta feel good. We gotta like stretch, and that's it. Really? Okay. Anyways, yeah. So speaking for more of that traditional understanding and that cosmology, which isn't Chinese, it's not Taoist, it's not Confucian, it's not Buddhist, none of those things. It predates all of those things, and it's of which they all pulled from. And even then, the idea of yin and yang, it's not Chinese, it's not Chinese medicine, it's not Taoist. It's way fucking older, and it went through a large series of development. And it wasn't just like, oh, yin and yang. It's like good and bad, positive and negative, light and dark, male and female. Okay, I got it. Yin and yang. It's like, if that was all that it meant, I can't imagine that they were trying to develop it for, I don't know, 500 years or more and went through a lot of ebbs and flows and trials and errors. I can't imagine that if it was that, just whoosh, I can't imagine that they would have, some thousands of people would have invested so much time and energy. I don't know. It just kind of is like, just don't know about that, Anyways, I'm kind of done. We're just going to keep going on tangents and rants. But who wants to hear that? Anyways, thanks for watching this video, and I'll talk to you soon.